Good afternoon from Dr. Logic. Shall we awkwardly prove some theorems of T together? I'm going to give you two of them because actually T as a system in itself isn't particularly interesting. The property of necessity implying truth is what's interesting, but it generally only comes up in combination with other things. So we're not going to spend all that much time on T. I'll give you a couple of theorems and then we'll go on to bigger, broader, more fascinating and wonderful things. But let's do some theorems first. So here comes the whiteboard. First of all, just remember our characteristic axiom for P is the axiom of necessity. Sorry, for T, not P. It is that necessary P implies P. So this is T. We're going to prove two theorems. The first is that, here, we'll call this one T1, is that P implies possibly P. So just as necessity implies truth, truth implies possibility. This is quite an easy thing to prove because we can start off by writing down a substitution instance of the T axiom. So we are going to have not P wherever our axiom has P. So this is uniform substitution, not P in for P on axiom T. Then some propositional logic. Contraposition says that if you've got a conditional, you can swap the antecedent and consequent and stick negations on both of them. So contraposition, line 1, and then just quick, I'm going to get rid of that double negation because propositional logic also allows us to do that. And now we have that P implies not necessarily not P, but you'll remember that we proved back as a theorem of K that possibly P is equivalent to not necessarily not P, and necessarily P is equivalent to not possibly not P. So given that both of these are theorems of K, and T is an extension of K, so everything that we can prove in K, we can still prove in T. This means that we can use our substitution of equivalent, or as we sometimes also call it, modal interchange on line 3 to get that P implies possibly P. So we've seen this technique before, where you take a theorem, you take its contrapositive, you do some substitution, you make atoms that were negated, unnegated, or the other way around. You do some double negations and some modal interchange. Sometimes you do contraposition back, or you might do some De Morgans. And there you go. You have a theorem. So that is our first one. The second one, let's give ourselves more space, but I'll keep the modal interchange principles. We might use them again. This one is a very interesting theorem. It says that it is possible that P implies necessary P. So think just a moment about what this says. So this says it could be the case, maybe not here, but maybe in some other world, where P's truth implies its necessity. What would this look like? What would it have to be the case for necessary P and P to coincide? Well, P would have to be true there. We're working in a reflexive system, so we have to have this reflexive loop. But if this world here doesn't see anything else, then every world it sees makes P true. So what this axiom is saying, or this theorem, sorry, is that either we are in a world which only sees itself, or it is possible that we see a world that only sees itself. So that's just a quick kind of sketch of why this theorem is true, but we still need to prove it. So we will start off by taking a substitution instance of our first theorem. So I'm going to do uniform substitution, and I'm going to replace all the occurrences of P with necessary P, and we're going to do this on our theorem T1. So this gets us that necessary P implies possibly necessary P. Now, again, all of the theorems of K are still theorems of T, and so we can use them again, including K7. Now, if you don't remember what K7 is, that's okay. I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to give you the substitution instance of it. You could always then kind of like desubstitutify and figure out what the axiom is. But this one says that necessarily P implies, possibly P implies necessarily P is equivalent to necessary P implying possibly necessary P. So this is K7 uniform substitution. And all I've done is I've put in necessary P wherever K7 actually had Q. And now you can see how this is going to go, because we have, this is a biconditional, but we therefore have both of the two conditionals. So just propositional logic will allow us to take out that if necessary P implies possibly necessary P, then we have possibly P implies necessary P. So oops, my annotations are getting messy. I said this was going to be awkward. So this is propositional logic on two. We've just taken this biconditional and taken one of the directions of the conditional, but now you can see we have a conditional. We have necessary P implies possibly necessary P as the antecedent. And look, we have the antecedent all on its own. So modus ponens allows us to get our desired conclusion, that it's possible that P implies necessary P. So that's modus ponens, lines 1 and 3. So there you have it. Now, this particular theorem is interesting because it's the first theorem that we've seen that has a diamond as its main connective. And in another video, I'll say a little bit about what this says about T more generally as a system of logic. There's some interesting things that fall out of the fact that we can actually prove theorems with possibility as the main operator. But for now, there's two theorems in T, reinforcing some of the mechanisms and techniques that we've seen before, and also giving us something new that we haven't seen before. So how exciting is that? Until next time, take care. See you later.